Live from KSAT 12, the 6 o'clock news starts right now.
And tonight on the news at 6, the search for suspects in a drive-by shooting. A child, 2 teenagers, and a woman were injured. Why San Antonio Police, its chief, says this attack was not random.
It holds so much history, but it's falling apart. VFW Post 76 along the Riverwalk needs a lot of work. How the organization is now working with the city and county to save the oldest post in Texas.
And a bill in the Texas legislature could get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on college campuses. What that bill requires and what it would mean for universities.
But first, we continue to wait for word from the nation's capital as we wait on President Joe Biden to address the country following a deal on the debt ceiling. That bill passed through the Senate last night in a vote of 63 to 36. And
Texas senators, they were split on their votes. Ted Cruz voted no, voting against that bill, while John Cornyn voted in favor of it. This deal suspends the debt ceiling until 2025, until after the presidential election, and of course avoids a dangerous U.S. default if we got to Monday, the June 5th deadline of hitting that ceiling, which was $31.4 trillion in the U.S.
Yeah, and there were a number of course, had to go through the House before it made it to the Senate, and a local number of House members from the San Antonio area also voted no. The only local representative to vote yes was Henry Cuellar. So it was very interesting, the machinations behind this, and kind of interesting, too, to see what the president has to say. He was scheduled to go on straight up at 6 o'clock. We're now 36 seconds past that, so we'll continue to wait for the president.
Yeah, as these things do sometimes run a little bit late. We know that ABC is going to cut right into the president once he does begin that Oval Office address. And look, there you can see their coverage now beginning, and we're waiting on him to actually begin speaking. But we can talk about some of the things that are actually in this bill. There is a cap on spending, but not on defense spending. I know, of course, Military City USA, a lot of interest in what would have happened to military salaries were we not able to reach a deal. But as far as defense spending goes, that will increase as normal over the next couple of years.
Yeah, this is something where President Joe Biden and House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy really put their reputations on the line to try to get this deal done. There was some skepticism whether the two sides could even work with one another. Let's go live now to the White House.
I ran for president. I was told the days of bipartisanship were over and that Democrats and Republicans can no longer work together. But I refuse to believe that, because America can never give in to that way of thinking. Look, the only way American democracy can function is through compromise and consensus. And that's what I work to do as your president. You know, to forge bipartisan agreement where it's possible and where it's needed. I've signed more than 350 bipartisan laws thus far in just 2.5 years, including an historic law that rebuilding America so that we can rank #1 in the world in infrastructure instead of where we rank now, number 13 in the world. Another historic law, rebuilding our manufacturing base so that we'll lead the world once again in making semiconductor chips, so much more, and so many more sophisticated ones. And now, a bipartisan budget agreement. This is vital because it's essential to the progress we've made over the last few years, is keeping full faith and credit of the United States of America and passing a budget that continues to grow our economy and reflects our values as a nation. That's why I'm speaking to you tonight, to report on the crisis averted and what we're doing to protect America's future. Passing this budget agreement was critical. The stakes could not have been higher. If we had failed to reach an agreement on the budget, there were extreme voices threatening to take America for the first time in our 247-year history into default on our national debt. Nothing would have been more irresponsible. Nothing would have been more catastrophic. Our economy would have been thrown into recession. Retirement accounts for millions of Americans would have been decimated. 8 million Americans would have lost their jobs. Default would have destroyed our nation's credit rating, which would have made everything from mortgages to car loans to funding for the government much more expensive. And it would have taken years to climb out of that hole. and America's standing as the most trusted, reliable financial partner in the world would have been shattered. So, it was critical to reach an agreement. And it's very good news for the American people. No one got everything they wanted, but the American people got what they needed. We averted an economic crisis, an economic collapse. We're cutting spending and bringing the deficits down at the same time. We're protecting important priorities from Social Security to Medicare to Medicaid to veterans to our transformational investments in infrastructure and clean energy. I want to commend Speaker McCarthy. You know, he and I, and our teams, we were able to get along, get things done. We were straightforward with one another, completely honest with one another, respectful with one another. Both sides operated in good faith. Both sides kept their word. And I also want to commend other congressional leaders. House Minority Leader Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Schumer, Senate Minority Leader McConnell. They acted responsibly and put the good of the country ahead of politics. The final vote in both chambers was overwhelming, far more bipartisan than anyone thought was possible. So, I want to thank the members of Congress who voted to pass this agreement, which I'm going to sign tomorrow and become the law. So here's what the deal does. First, it cuts spending. And over the next 10 years, the deficit will be cut by more than $1 trillion. And that will be on top of the record $1.7 trillion. I already cut the deficit in my first 2 years in office. And it's clear we're all on a much more fiscally responsible course than the one I inherited when I took office 4 years ago. When I came to office, the deficit had increased every year the previous 4 years. And nearly $8 trillion was added to the national debt in the last administration. And now we're turning things around. And that's good for America. You know, my dad used to have an expression. He said, Joey, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget. I'll tell you what you value. That's at the heart of this debate. What do we value? Protecting seniors. You may remember during my State of the Union address, there was a spirit exchange between me and a few Republicans spontaneously occurring on the floor of the House of Representatives. I was pointing out that for years, some of them were putting forward proposals to cut Social Security and Medicare. And some of them that night took exception, and they said very loudly that that wasn't true. So I asked them on the floor at that night, I said, ask them a simple question. Will you agree not to cut Social Security, not to cut Medicare? Would they agree to protect these essential programs? They're a lifeline for millions of Americans. Programs that these Americans have been paying into every single paycheck they've earned since they started working. And that provides so much peace of mind. With the bright lights and cameras on, those few Republicans who were protesting, they agreed. They said they wouldn't cut it. That's how we protected Social Security and Medicare from the beginning and from it being cut, period. Healthcare was another priority for me, a top priority. I made it clear from the outset, I would not agree to any cuts in Medicaid, another essential lifeline for millions of Americans, including children in poverty, the elderly in nursing homes, and Americans living with disabilities. The original House Republican proposal would have cut health care for up to 21 million Americans on Medicaid. And I said no. And Medicare was protected. And so were millions of people most in need. Look, I've long believed that the only one truly sacred obligation that the government has is to prepare those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't come home. That's why my last budget provided VA hospitals with additional funding for more doctors, nurses, and equipment to accommodate the needs of veterans and more appointments. The House Republican plan would have meant 30 fewer million VA healthcare visits for our veterans. We didn't let that happen. In addition, this bill fully funds the Bipartisan PACT Act, the most significant law in decades for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits and for their families. It expands access to those veterans and their families to health care and to disability benefits. Look, we're investing in America and our people and in our future. We've created over 13 million new jobs, nearly 800,000 manufacturing jobs, Where is it written that America can't lead the world again in manufacturing? Unemployment is at 3.7%. More Americans are working today than ever in the history of this country. And inflation has dropped 10 straight months in a row. In this debate, I refuse to put what was responsible for all this economic progress on the chopping block. This bipartisan agreement protects the law that will help us build the best infrastructure in the world. It fully protects the CHIPS and Science Act, which is going to bring key parts of our supply chain to America, so we don't have to rely on others, like semiconductors, those tiny computer chips smaller than the tip of your finger that affect nearly everything we rely on, from cell phones to building automobiles to the most sophisticated weapon systems and so much more. We protected another law that I passed and signed last year that finally beat Big Pharma, which I've been trying to do for over 30 years. It finally gives Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices, just like the VA has been able to do for veterans. This law has already dramatically cut the cost of insulin for seniors, from as much as $400 a month to just $35 a month for insulin. Negotiating lower drug prices not only saves seniors a lot of money, it saves the country a lot of money. $160 billion that's not having to be paid out because drug prices are more rational. We pay the highest drug prices of any industrial nation in the world, and it's just the beginning. You know, we also protected the most significant breakthrough ever in dealing with the existential threat of climate change. Today, new wind and solar power is cheaper than fossil fuel. Since I've been in office, clean energy and advanced manufacturing have brought in $470 billion in private investments. It's going to create thousands of jobs, good-paying jobs, all across this country, and help the environment at the same time. Remember, at the beginning of this debate, some of my Republican colleagues were determined to gut the clean energy investments. I said, no, we kept them all. And there's so much more to do. We're going to do even more to reduce the deficit. We need to control spending if we're going to do that. But we also have to raise revenue and go after tax cheats and make sure everybody's paying their fair share. No one, I promise, no one making less than $400,000 a year will pay a penny more in federal taxes. But like most of you at home, I know the federal tax system isn't fair. That's why I kept my commitment, again, that no one earning less than $400,000 a year will pay a penny more in federal taxes. That's why last year I secured more funding more IRS funding to go after wealthy tax cheats. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, and it is nonpartisan, says that this bill will bring in $150 billion, and other outside experts expect that it would save as much as $400 billion because it's forcing people to pay their fair share. Republicans may not like it, but I'm going to make sure the wealthy pay their fair share. I'm also proposed closing over a dozen special interest tax loopholes for big oil, crypto traders, hedge fund billionaires, saving taxpayers billions of dollars. Republicans defended every single one of these special interest loopholes, every single one. But I'm going to be coming back, and with your help, I'm going to win. Right now, catch this, right now the average billionaire in America pays just 8% in federal taxes. 8%. Teachers and firefighters pay more than that. That's why I proposed a minimum tax for billionaires. Republicans are against it, but I'm going to keep fighting for it. No billionaire should pay less in federal taxes than a teacher or a firefighter. Look, let me close with this. I know bipartisanship is hard, and unity is hard, but we can never stop trying. Because in moments like this one, the ones we just faced, where the American economy and the world economy is at risk of collapsing, there's no other way. No matter how tough our politics gets, we need to see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Treat each other with dignity and respect. To join forces as Americans to stop shouting, lower the temperature, and work together to pursue progress, secure prosperity, and keep the promise of America for everybody. As I've said in my inaugural address, without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. And we can never become that country. I can honestly say to you tonight that I've never been more optimistic about America's future. We just need to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there's nothing we can't do when we do it together. So thank you all for listening, taking the time tonight to listen to me. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
President Joe Biden there addressing the nation from the Oval Office after Congress late last night signed off on that deal to avoid default and passed a deal on the debt ceiling. If you'd like more specifics on that, we have a full article on KSAT.com.
We're going to continue with our local newscast now. Police are looking for 4 suspects in a drive-by shooting that injured 4 people, including a 5-year-old boy.
This happened at the Costa Vizcaya apartments on the northeast side. Our John Paul Barajas has been there at that scene this afternoon and got the latest from the police chief.
There are 4 victims due to that drive-by shooting. A 5-year-old boy is mentioned, a 15 and 16-year-old boys, as well as a 60-year-old woman. Their conditions are unknown at this time, but we do know all of them were taken to the hospital. We spoke to a man off camera who tells us the 6-year-old woman was his mother and that all the victims were either related or family friends. Police chief tells us that they are still looking for 4 suspects. The chief adds they have information on a suspect vehicle, but wanted to verify the car wasn't stolen before releasing that to us. At this time, they do not know what type of gun was used or how many rounds were fired. The chief adds the Costa Vizcaya apartment complex isn't a known problem area, but that this was a targeted incident. At this time, they don't have a motive, but they do believe one of the teens was the target.
Drive-bys can happen anywhere. It just depends where the person that the shooters are after. It just depends where they are. I mean, it can happen anywhere.
Back out here, the scene has cleared. All the officers have taken off, but there is still remnants of the crime scene. There's crime scene tape still on the ground. Both entrances to the complex have since opened up. And earlier today, we posted on social media that traffic was backed up due to the large scene. That has since cleared out, and now it's just your typical evening traffic. John Paul Barajas, KSAT 12 News.
Thank you, John Paul. After a little more than 5 hours of deliberations, Mark Howerton found not guilty of the 2017 murder of his girlfriend, Trinity University student Kaylee Mondotti. Howerton was found guilty of a lesser charge of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury. This was Mondotti's family's emotional reaction after the verdict was read. Her father in tears, hugging family and friends after that verdict was read. Howerton was put in handcuffs and taken to the Bexar County Jail, where he will await sentencing. The prosecutor on this case, David Lunan, had this to say afterwards.
We're happy the family's satisfied that there's closure here, and having to meet with family members and friends and everything else who are grievously affected by these crimes, and they've been hurting, and we're happy to conclude it today.
We have reached out to defense attorney John Hunter for a statement. We have not heard back. A sentencing hearing expected in about 2 weeks. Howerton is facing 2 to 20 years in prison.
A man accused of stabbing a woman at the Palladium movie theater at the Rim Shopping Center has been found guilty. 26-year-old Andrew Pantaleone was found guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. SAPD says that Pantaleone stabbed the woman multiple times as she walked into the hallway of the theater in June 2021. He's been sentenced to 16 years in prison.
And tonight, the San Antonio Police Department has photos of the people suspected of shooting a man and stealing his car outside of a Planet Fitness. Police say these 3 people are the suspects. Officers say the woman seen here lured the 41-year-old man to the gym. SAPD says the 2 men then robbed him at gunpoint. It all happened last Wednesday morning outside of a Planet Fitness on North General McMullen near Old Highway 90. Anyone with information on this incident asked to call Crime Stoppers. That number, 210-224-STOP.
A fire that started in a backyard spread to inside a home, and a man was hurt trying to stop this. The fire started around noon at a house in the 6400 block of McKeon Drive. That's not far from Rittiman and Loop 410. San Antonio fire officials say the flames sparked in the backyard, then they spread to the house. The man burned was taken to BAMC. He is expected to be okay. No word on what caused that fire. What should be a shining showplace for veterans and visitors is crumbling. This is the state's oldest Veterans of Foreign Wars post right along the Riverwalk.
Yeah, the more than 100-year-old Victorian home in the fight of its life with the city and the county, which worries that it's in such bad shape it may be unsafe and unsanitary. It's easy to see where it's falling down.
Camelia Juarez shows us from the balconies to the bathrooms, the need for repair is mounting.
VFW Post 76, veterans hold ceremonies there. Anyone is welcome to come have a drink and enjoy the wraparound patio, and tourists fawn over its historic architecture. Much of the beauty is in decay or inaccessible because of years of patchwork repairs.
You can feel movement. The veranda, second floor veranda, you can feel movement on the floor deck, which because of the lack of proper waterproofing done over the years.
Some of those overdue repairs include plumbing. You can't even use the restroom in this building. You got to use porta potties.
Building committee chair Steve Trevino says preserving the house is essential to the history of San Antonio. The home belonged to the original brewmaster of the Lone Star Brewery. It has a historic state designation.
It goes beyond value of monetary.
But paying for the repairs is a challenge. The building committee is working with area foundation donors and negotiating with the county to preserve it. San Antonio's historic preservation architect is looking forward to the needed repairs.
His first comment to me on the phone was, "I've been waiting for this phone call."
The VFW Post is working with the contractor and laying down the plans.
We need to take the proper steps. It needs to be done right.
Camelia Juarez, KSAT 12 News.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at public universities may be coming to an end. Texas lawmakers reached a consensus on a bill that would ban DEI at campuses across the state.
Our Jonathan Cotto spoke with a local nonprofit leader who weighs in on the potential impact that ban could have and how DEI played a role in her success today.
I feel definitely the target of the LGBTQ community is very strong this year in state legislatures across the country.
On Saturday, Texas lawmakers reaching an agreement on a new law that would ban DEI programs, offices, and training at public-funded universities. An effort San Antonio AIDS Foundation CEO Charisse Rohr-Algrini says is another way to target specific communities.
But there's long been attacks on equal opportunity options across the country, but definitely in Texas, with this feeling like, well, you got ahead because you were given a handout. That story has been around for a long time.
Rohr-Algrini says diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and training are critical for the inclusion of persons of all backgrounds at any organization or school.
We have to work to be representatives to people of color, to the LGBTQ community, to people from disadvantaged backgrounds, to be the presence for them and help them up.
Senate Bill 17 says universities cannot create diversity offices, hire employees for DEI work, or require any DEI training as a condition for being hired by or admitted at a university. All hiring must be colorblind and sex neutral. However, Rohr-Algrini says without DEI, many could fall through the cracks.
And the reality is that if we're not intentional about it, we won't include people from all backgrounds. It's not that we're excluding people, but unless you're thinking through who do you have here representing the community, it's very easy to miss people in that process.
Jonathan Cotto, KSAT 12 News.
Look outside with live cam on this Friday. Blue skies out there, those big puffy clouds. We're headed towards the weekend. Kasky.
Yeah, and you don't have to travel all that far for some thunderstorms. Just outside of the KSAT 12 viewing area, just outside of Val Verde County and parts of West Texas, up into the Panhandle as well. Organized system coming together, and then we've got this discrete thunderstorm, the supercell we've been watching, that's just northwest of Val Verde County. This is a severe thunderstorm, and notice this red box here. That is a tornado watch for locations west of San Antonio this evening. We're going to get more into this, take a closer look at that storm, and talk about the most favorable scenario that's going to transpire tonight coming right up.
All right. What's catching your eye? Because looks like traffic, although slow in some spots, is moving pretty smoothly on this Friday evening in both directions. We'll be right back.
With spring rains covering the area, Texas wildflowers blooming and helping the bee population. Tonight on the Night Beat, We're going to take a look at what local beekeepers are doing to maintain the sudden spike in pollinators. Comes up at 10. Well, this year, 4.5 million people will need a blood transfusion. Blood banks continue to face dire shortages as supplies have failed to reach their pre-pandemic levels. In fact, a fifth of blood centers nationwide have less than a day's supply of blood.
29% have less than 2 days. Ursula Perry shows us that's why researchers are trying to create synthetic blood.
Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood. In fact, 1 in 7 people who go to the hospital will need blood. Because the demand is so great, researchers are creating a new type of synthetic blood inside a lab.
So the holy grail for transfusion is a dried artificial whole blood.
Bioengineer Susan Shea is part of the nationwide team that's working to make synthetic blood a reality. It looks like a powder, and it has the same components as human blood.
This product that we're developing will consist of a nanoparticle that is able to perform the function of a red blood cell, so it can deliver oxygen.
The synthetic blood does not have to match the patient's blood type.
The cellular components are artificial, and they therefore will not express those markers that recipients might have an adverse reaction to, as they would if they received a type mismatched blood donation.
And unlike donated blood that has a shelf life of up to 42 days, ideally this synthetic blood could last months, even years. It does not need to be refrigerated, so it can be used not only in hospitals, but ambulances, rescue helicopters, and war zones, places where it's difficult to have blood readily available.
I don't know that we can guarantee that this product alone will eliminate the blood shortage, but it's certainly a very important step forward.
Just 1 pint of blood will save up to 3 people, but only 37% of the population in the U.S. is eligible to donate blood. And even then, only 10% of us do. So if you're over 110 pounds, over 17 years old, and you're healthy, you're eligible. Ursula Perry, KSAT 12 News.
All right, maybe blue skies where you are, but there are some thunderstorms out there right now, Adam.
Yeah, we'll take the rain. Just leave the tornadoes.
Yeah.
Leave the hail and tornadoes out of it, right? Yeah, unfortunately, we can't always do that this time of year, but the threat is west of San Antonio this evening. Let's get right to the satellite and radar and take a look at where the storms have been developing. Off into West Texas, North Texas, Panhandle as well. And then there's one little cluster is starting to head into the KSAT 12 viewing area closer to Valverde County. Not quite there yet, but closer to it. We're watching and monitoring this activity for the potential of any of it to head our way overnight tonight and early morning hours tomorrow. We could even see a similar situation the next couple of nights. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Storms organizing in West Texas, then we have the potential of getting their leftovers in the late night and early morning hours. Now, I don't think odds favor that a whole lot tonight, other than a few showers possibly making it to San Antonio. This red box, that is the tornado watch, meaning conditions are favorable for a potential tornado should a thunderstorm develop from Del Rio to Uvalde, Lakey, Rock Springs, Junction, and Sonora. And that watch is valid through 11 p.m. this evening. Nothing in San Antonio here, but you go off to the west, just north of Valverde County. And now in northern Valverde County, we've got a new severe thunderstorm warning near Pandale and Juneau. I turned off the lightning so you could see the reflectivity. The yellows indicate the active severe thunderstorm warnings, and the red boxes are where we have tornado warnings for Doppler radar indicated tornadoes. So rotation, that's basically been detected by Doppler radar, but nothing confirmed by people on the ground yet. Here's a 3D view of it. You see the storm structure, the height of these storms, and I want to isolate just the hail for you. There are pockets of large hail within these thunderstorms just north of Pandale, and they're moving to the southeast into northern Valverde County toward Pandale and Juneau. And this purple and black areas where we have some of the largest hail could have hail up the size of eggs, and even potentially baseball-sized hail in some isolated locations. There is that chance within some of the bigger storms that develop this evening. We have many future casts, and they all give you different answers. I think this one's the most favorable and most likely scenario, where we have these storms 7, 8 o'clock out west, Valverde County, Edwards County, Kinney County, 9, 10 o'clock starting to move eastward and then dissipating toward Uvalde and La Pryor, and then even San Antonio, maybe getting a few showers left over closer to midnight tonight. Of course, we'll be here to monitor it and keep you updated through the severe thunderstorm threat and then even thereafter. We also have Tropical Storm Arlene to talk about. West of Florida right now. Winds of 40 miles per hour. Barely a tropical storm. You got to be 39 miles per hour or greater to be a tropical storm. So very briefly detected 40 mile per hour winds in a small little portion of that cluster of storms. That has organized a bit, but it's weakening again, and it's going to be a remnant low by tomorrow. Our rated storm chances, 30%, so widely separated at any point this weekend. We're talking night and day we could have them because we have to watch for the leftovers of West Texas storms during the late night and early morning hours. And then every afternoon, we have to watch for just some random pop-up downpours with a little bit of lightning and thunder. Cross your fingers for your neighborhood. And we're not expecting anything severe, so just cross your fingers for a quick, good downpour at some point this weekend. And even into next week, we have those daily 30% chances. We had a high of 90 today. 87 right now. Dew point is 65. Bandera, you're 86 along with Comfort. Stinson Airport measuring 89 along with Pleasanton. 94 in Laredo, 89 in Del Rio. Check out Ozona with that storm at 79 now. We'll be at 70 degrees in the morning, 10% chance of a shower, up to 30% tomorrow afternoon, and even into tomorrow evening and tomorrow night. Right near 90 for the high temperature on Saturday. By Sunday, a little extra cloud cover, so we'll trim off a few degrees at 87. Keep in mind, the average high is 91. We're going to be below that as we get on into the end of the weekend and especially into next week, anywhere from 85 to 88 for the highs then.
Yeah, temperatures don't look too bad for this time of year.
Yeah, love those temperatures.
Thanks, Adam.
We'll be right back.